Welcome to the Frontline Herbalism podcast with your host Nicole Rose from the Solidarity Apothecary. This is your place for all things plants and liberation. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Frontline Herbalism podcast. I'm sorry for not putting out an episode recently. Again, just same old stuff of my little one getting sick. Foolishly went to a soft play so that he could see his daddy and picked up some sort of Ming. As soon as I walked in there, I was like, oh God, it was just like full of kids. But anyway, he's doing better now, thank God. But yeah, today I have something really, really special. So I have an interview with a prisoner called Amu. And if you have been involved in like Palestine solidarity stuff, you've probably heard about the hunger strikers, who, were on strike with various demands relating to Palestine and their cases and, their lack of trials and things like this. And yeah, Amu was part of that and has been a very, very active prisoner in terms of like agitation around the conditions and public writing and organizing and all the things. So I got an email being like, oh, Amu would really love to connect about prisoners' herbal stuff and things we're doing. And I was like, fuck yeah. So we have done this interview and it's kind of like asynchronous, if that makes sense. So I emailed the questions and then they recorded them to a friend and then they sent me the audio and then another friend, because of my childcare stuff, has chopped them together for me. So like he's done an amazing job and it is like extremely smooth, but I think maybe not every answer syncs to like every question perfectly, if that makes sense. But I didn't want to leave anything out because Amu just shares a lot of like painful insights into the prison system, a lot of kind of like beautiful humbleness around like political organizing and resisting imperialism and all the things they talk about. So yeah, I'm just really, really, really grateful for their time and energy and answering the questions. And hopefully we can do like future things like this. I just feel bad because of my like very limited working hours and millions of commitments. So, but yeah, I think what they share is really, really special. And I guess just like content warning around references to things in prison, like self-harm and suicide attempts and things. Also, I guess because people, know me as an anarchist, I'm quite kind of like public about that. I have, like all of my work is centered around state violence pretty much and resistance to the state and acknowledgement of the state as the fucking near enough primary cause of, harm and oppression. And before, after we were doing this interview and things, like it did come out that Amu is like running to be elected in like a local election. I think they're standing for like Islington or something. And like, we haven't had a chance to talk about that in terms of like curiosity of like why they're doing that and what they want to achieve. And I guess like I feel a tension around tactics like that, like any tactic that kind of like legitimizes the state, I really, really struggle with. So like, it's just not my jam, like kind of, I follow electoral politics because these people shape our lives, but I don't, I'm fucking anarchist. I believe in like direct action. I don't believe in the state. So anyway, but I didn't want to just be like, no, I'm not going to publish your interview now, because I think what they share is like fucking powerful and important. And I want to amplify prisoner voices. And if I only interviewed people that had identical politics to me, like I wouldn't fucking learn anything. Like it wouldn't be interesting to anyone. Like, yeah, things are, varied and complex. And I feel like I can learn something from fucking every person I meet. And that's like my approach to life. So I was very, very grateful to learn from Amu and to start this conversation. So yeah, and I guess just for context, what I think is interesting about the interview is that we were both like in similar situations of I was in prison for just under 2 years, but 19 months of that I was on remand, and Amu has been on remand for a long time, probably at least 19 months by the time I'm publishing this. And obviously I was in for this campaign against this huge animal testing company and lots of ALF stuff and direct action, and they're inside for an alleged action So yeah, like, and you know, we've both been in HMP Bronzefield, and obviously prisons don't fucking change because they're just designed to be hellholes. So it's kind of interesting, like feeling that contrast, like all these years later, of what those conditions are like. And anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Please check it out. Also, in terms of Solidarity Apothecary news, the Herbalism PTSD and Traumatic Stress course is opening again on the 22nd of March. Spring solstice. It's a fucking amazing offering. No one's turned away for lack of funds. Super, super comprehensive course all about trauma and the nervous system and the politics of trauma, and in-depth stuff around nervines, so 32 plants with an affinity for the nervous system, how to understand what's going on in your body in terms of anxiety and distress and stress hormones and all of the things. So yeah, and that course like funds pretty much 95% of what I do. So yeah, it's very important to all the work I do around herbalism and state violence. So anyway, please check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes. Please join the waiting list if you can. It gives me a lot of relief to know that people are interested in it when I see that waiting list kind of grow before the launch and stuff. So anyway, all right, thank you for listening, and I will be back soon. Okay, take care. For people who don't know who you are or where you are or what has been happening in recent months, please can you share more about yourself?
I really don't know how to answer this, so I'm actually gonna skip the first question. But I guess at the moment I can say that I've been trying to recover from this hunger strike, and I'm really enjoying eating again and being able to move and feeling this like growing sense of energy internally, and then like it feels like the world and the movement is like absolutely buzzing. So I've been plotting a lot and thinking about the year ahead and what we're doing and why we're doing it, and like needing a lot of help researching that. And then I guess that leads, to who we're doing this with, and how we're doing it together, and then like when. And always the feeling is like 100 years ago, like 800 years ago would have been good to have this done by, but failing that, it's like just like a constant battle to try and not rush or let my anger turn into frustration or bitterness, especially at my loved ones or at myself. But yeah, this is like, even though the world is on fire, it's still quite slow work sometimes, or there's just different paces that we're going at all the time. So yeah, that's a bit about where I'm at. And
so when I was in HMP Bronzefield, a very long time ago now, the prison was rife with abuse by officers, neglect, people self-harming and attempting suicide left, right and centre. Can you describe what it's like at the moment?
Yeah, in terms of the prison population, I'm meeting everyone that the system has failed the way it was designed to. So the unemployed, cleaners. There's someone on my landing who thought she was going to go work in Abu Dhabi, and then and mothers and pharmacists and teachers and data analysts, software engineers, PhD students, shoplifters, drug takers, drug sellers, and drug movers. The whole cycle. And yeah, obviously when you are meeting people that have sold drugs and they know who they've been selling drugs to, I think the classist nature of who ends up in prison and who are their customers who are putting them in prison just becomes a bit absurd, really. They're all survivors of domestic abuse or neurodivergent. They're all or we're all, I guess, symptoms of 14 years of austerity government.
What are the people like who you were meeting inside? I found such a rich mix of amazing humans and the saddest of stories. So many histories of childhood abuse, domestic violence, poverty, and more.
This is the bit that is quite long and quite explicit about some of the ways that people are not coping with being in Bronzefield. So, yeah, as I said, it's maybe not the right place for it, but I'll just read it to you anyway, and then we can talk about it. So it's on the question of like, who are you meeting, childhood abuse, domestic, and poverty. The prison peels back every layer of care you have around yourself and then force feeds you a version of care designed to make you unable to care about anything ever again. I'll try to be concrete. My neighbor, Elle, let's call her, is suicidal and bizarrely considerate about it. She makes her way upstairs at lockup every day and threatens to jump off the railing so we all get locked up while they assault her to put her back in her cell. But we're all about to be locked in anyway. She bangs her head against the wall, a sign that someone needs help written clear as day on her forehead, but not at night time. The next door along from her is another woman, I'll call her A. She banged on her door and the small glass window in it until it smashed, then cut herself on the glass and smeared her blood on the wall. On my 30th birthday, she also climbed over the railings and let go as I reached her in time to grab her legs. I crocheted her a hat. 2 weeks later, she did the same thing again, but this time I walked away from her rather than towards her. This is how the prison forces us to obey its reality, changing us with its unchanging logic. That we are not fit to be part of the world. That we are not safe to be around. That we can't be trusted, shouldn't be loved. Another neighbor, S, was on hunger strike as well, and thirst strike in Bronzefield for 6 months. She was taken to hospital twice a week to be pumped full of fluids and intubated. Force feeding is only illegal if you're of sound mind. Lots of things are only illegal if you can act normal enough that the state can easily discredit you, can't easily discredit you, disappear you. Anyway, S recently smashed her TV and used the glass to cut herself to the bone. She might get freed on Friday, so she's handed me back the crochet stuff I lent her, along with patches for a blanket we're collectively making for Kessa. These are some of the women who wear their pain on their sleeves, who have razor blades in their stomachs and staples in their necks, tweezers in their forearms. And the ones who exhibit less attention-seeking behavior, the ones who aren't white, I can't say why or how exactly their whiteness defines how they behave. I have some ideas, but of course it does. And the ones who cry themselves to sleep every night, the ones who never leave their cells, the ones who are always locked in, the ones who don't speak English, are in prison for 6 months past their release date. My friend M was in Peterborough for over a year for stealing a gold necklace, then in Bronzefield for months over her sentence, waiting to get immigration bail until she was released onto the street, having to make her way to Croydon with no phone to sign in at a probation centre. She was told she was HIV positive as she left the prison. She'd been HIV positive the whole time she was in jail, but no one had told her. Or maybe they told her, but without bothering to get a translator. Either way, she almost walked onto the train tracks. She left me a shawl she'd made, her first and only crochet project. C was remanded on arson charges for trying to kill herself with an oven. I made her a hat too. She has very sensitive ears. She said she was going to plead guilty to the charges because she felt bad, feeling guilty, and pleading guilty. She couldn't deal with the noise levels and would bang her head to drown it out, pick her skin off her forearms when she was locked in, throw chairs and fight guards when overwhelmed, flood and bang, scream and rip, and then play hide and seek, trying to sneak up and pounce. She likes skips and cherryade, milk chocolate digestives and word searches. But what about the murderers? It's worth noting here that there are people who have killed and wear uniforms in Bronzefield.
How are you spending time during Bang Up?
During Bang Up, I yap a lot on the phone with all my loved ones, expensively, and I read a lot. I just finished reading Against the Loveless World by Susan Abelhauer, and I think a mutual friend, Alex, gave the same book to my co-defendant in Bristol, Louis. So we have this little book club going. I'm writing a lot. It's become a big part of my life in prison. Not that I've ever written anything before. But yeah, like a lot of people, it becomes, yeah, it becomes an important part of your life. And like everyone, I guess, like we're all, like my friends and I, trying to find ways to be in solidarity with Palestine. And also more recently with the women's revolution that's under attack in Rojava. Also building connections between the arms trade, war, displacement, and mining. So yeah, Bang Up is kind of a dreaded part of the day because of short staffing. It's often like indefinite time behind a locked door, but I try and see it as an uninterrupted time to plot the demise of imperialism, you know? Yeah, I'm like already in prison, you know? So if they're gonna lock me up, I'm definitely gonna make them regret it.
I know getting outside on quote unquote association can feel like a rarity, but can you describe what the prison courtyards are like? Have you been able to find any weeds and plants?
Yeah, the prison courtyard is 124 paces from Main Street to the house block. I counted it the other day. So from activities to residents, it's just like not that much space really. But in that space there's cherry trees and New Zealand flax and rose bushes and lavender bushes. But best of all, there's the irises, which in summer are like so lovely to look at as they are like green and they kind of like flip and flop in the wind. But when they dry out, and before the rot sets in, then you can weave them, which I've had a lot of fun with actually.
What was your relationship like with land before being in prison?
I would say our relationship with land has been deliberately sabotaged, you know, since the closing of the commons and people during the Industrial Revolution needing to move from the land to cities for work and, you know, opportunities, and just because that's how things were going. But yeah, like in these cities, people just were living in buildings without any kitchens in them, and just like I feel like immediately is so clear like how um that connection was like chipped away at, you know. Yeah. But personally I've always been privileged enough, even though I grew up in London, to have lots of access to outdoor spaces. And I've always done gardening with my mum or at these allotments. Um yeah, but it's actually weaving that really makes my heart sing. Um, so harvesting rush from the river near our boats on the Thames, with a neighbour's paddleboard and a pair of scissors, or gleaning willow from community willow beds in the Highlands, or yeah, the irises leaves in prison courtyards. That feels to me like more rooting than anything else. And how we resist the pressure to be industrialized or institutionalized. Yeah, for me, that's how everything comes together and connects.
I heard you were an active member of the Land Workers Alliance. Can you share more about what they do and why you feel it's important?
So the UK branch of La Via Campesina is LWA, Land Workers Alliance. But La Via Campesina represents 200 million peasant farmers. Like one of the other branches, for example, in Brazil is Movimento Sem Terra, which I think we all should draw a lot of inspiration from. There's these massive landowners, obviously in Brazil, but there are also these people that, even though they don't technically, because of just a lot of corruption, basically have access to land, they just show up to different sites with tools and materials and wood, and they build schools and housing and a bar so they can have a party, as Jyoti always says, um, and they just reclaim that space, you know. So I think we have a lot to learn from them. Yeah. Um, of course, yeah, like the scale, the power, and the urgency of that kind of work is vital to all of us. Because it's our climate collapsing, and it's food, not bombs, that will keep us alive. So nothing and no one really is more important than farmers.
You've been a passionate supporter of Palestinian liberation, a struggle inseparable from land. How do you feel land struggles relate to those of us in the so-called UK?
I would say that land struggles in the UK connect to Palestine in the way that all land struggles are linked, in that we are strongest when we are most connected, our most rooted in relationship, which have always sustained us. So, of course, settlers, colonizers, Zionists, and imperialists will always target our ability to feed and sustain ourselves, which, as CK Janu, an incredible comrade and, yeah, incredible comrade from Kerala, taught me is our birthright. Roaming and foraging and being able to stop and sleep wherever you want. Yeah, there's no way that isn't the way we should be living, you know? Yeah, and the pattern of imperialism is always the same, even though they weave with all these different colored threads. The commonality is disconnection through displacement or extraction, high taxes or poisoned water, burning olive groves, or in the UK context, releasing sewage into the Thames, you know? This is always the work of those whose relationship to the world is one of like utter entitlement and possessiveness, which, yeah, I guess is closest to rape, really, and is enabled in the same way with silence.
You've been incredibly brave to undertake a hunger strike during your time inside. Can you share more about why you did this and what it has felt like in your body?
Because we've watched the genocide play out live on our phone screens for 2 years, and we've been trained as bystanders and forced to look and feel as though there's nothing we can do, as Palestine and Sudan and the Congo are violated and destroyed. And as Palestinians have shown us, and as prison has shown us, even from a prison cell, you can act, not asking for change, but demanding it. And I think being imprisoned is an intensification or a concentration of that disconnection. And if disconnection is a pattern, and fascism and capitalism and war are the threads, then prison is like a tightening. It constricts until you can barely imagine breathing. John told me that in Czech they call a rib cage a rib basket. I don't know why we call it a rib cage in English. I'd really rather have a rib basket. But yeah, anyway, I decided to resist and to break free of that logic and control, in the way that people always will, as long as they're detained and incarcerated. In a way, it's the only way that I could think to take action and call for urgent mobilization. And yeah, it was tough. A hunger strike is a daily commitment to a dream, really. But resisting gave me a euphoria that can only come with the understanding that you belong to the world again. You belong to yourself. And there's always energy and always grief in resistance and always victory and defiance. And in laughter.
I've never done a hunger strike. Like, sadly, we had next to no organised prisoner support or much like outside solidarity. However, like, hunger was a really familiar experience in prison. I remember regularly not being able to sleep from being so hungry, and it really didn't help being vegan in prison. But yeah, it was like an undercurrent of my prison experience. How is hunger used as a weapon in prison?
Hunger as a weapon in prison is such a precise line of questioning, and I'm really sorry, firstly, that you went to sleep hungry while you were in Bronzefield. It's absurd that anyone goes to sleep hungry. And I guess that's the way that they ensure scarcity. Today they actually told another landing on 2B that they wouldn't allow seconds. So even though there's enough food, they won't let prisoners line up for seconds because apparently prisoners are unruly about it or something, you know. Which, yeah, it's just one of the many ways that prisoners are punished for like planned scarcity and incompetence, you know. So yeah, I'm not sure what it was like when you were here, but the kitchen's still under order every day. There's supposed to be £2 spent per prisoner per day on food, which is not much out of the £63,000 a year that they get as a private company from the public government funds. But yeah, hunger is definitely a weapon of the state. Yeah, on Christmas Day, there was a bag of popcorn served for Christmas dinner. Yeah, it was it was an interesting time.
Can you speak to nutrition or a lack of it in a prison diet?
In terms of nutrition, so I think I'm not sure what number question we're on now, but I think it's the last section of the plants and land struggle. The nutrition is mostly iceberg lettuce. I read in East of Eden by John Steinbeck, sorry, this is such a tangent, that trains, like refrigerated trains, were invented partially to transport iceberg lettuce to New York, or they weren't invented because of that, but that was one of the first things that they transported. And there's something like hundreds of thousands of tons of ice were made in a week to be able to let New Yorkers have crispy lettuce in their burgers. Anyway, I think if you took the iceberg lettuce off our plates most days, there would only be Warburton sliced white bread and these chips that regularly break prisoners' teeth. There's a prisoner who like buried one of her chip teeth in the prison courtyard. Like apparently that brings good luck, but I'm like, to who, you know? um yeah, obviously it can definitely always be worse, but it's the root of a lot of conflict and body shaming and mental health, and also because there's like the mother and baby unit and these pregnancy wings. It's the issue in the development of baby health as well. If prisoners could decide what to eat rather than relying on, ironically, a French catering company, then obviously things would be really different. And they kind of are different already in government-run jails and in Peterborough, you know, Sodexo's other UK prison. But yeah, Bronzefield is, well, like Pentonville is like under investigation for human rights abuses. Yeah, I'm always just feeling that Sodexo should have stuck to feeding school kids, you know, rather than killing their mothers.
The hunger strikers have done an amazing job at shining light on the conditions of UK prisons. As they say, rot doesn't grow where the sun shines. What do you want to bring to light about the prison system?
In terms of bringing stuff to light, just that anyone could end up here in prison. It doesn't matter what you've done or whether you've done anything. There are 500 prisoners in Bronzefield, and each one of us is an evidence bag of the failings of the state and the world, not the cause of it.
Sometimes people can end up like exceptionalizing political prisoners. And yeah, I know full well how prisoners inside for involvement in different social struggles are often treated differently, especially in terms of surveillance. But I'd regularly feel frustrated when repression of political prisoners was not connected to like broader repression and like the regular routine violence of the state. For example, quote unquote, social prisoners, like a really imperfect term, also face like very high usage of remand, disruption to post, visits and calls, physical abuse from officers, solitary confinement and segregation, excessive license conditions on release, stitch-ups from the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, falsifying evidence and all the things. So yeah, like how can we make this more explicit in our movements? Like what do you think needs to happen for people to connect the dots between the social and political prisoners and like the broader oppressive nature of the prison system?
As for me, no one should be in prison full stop. So it doesn't or shouldn't matter whether as a political prisoner you broke the rules on purpose, or as a social prisoner you broke the rules by accident. I don't know. The point is that the rules are breaking all of us. And then when you're here, for whatever apparent reason, it's quite a radicalizing process, understanding that things need to change now with your probably racialized, probably Muslim, probably neurodivergent, probably poor body in one of His Majesty's prison cells as a living proof. Yeah, I would say this is me learning what we should be doing. I think that's part of the reason that I wanted to be in touch with you. Like Prisoners Herbal keeps coming up. I think there's 2 copies of it in reception for me that people have sent in, that reception won't let me have at the moment. But I know that other prisoners in here have read it and are doing these herbal foot baths and taking care of themselves as best they can using Prisoners Herbal, you know. So I think, yeah, I think I have loads to learn.
What are your thoughts on prison abolition? Have they changed since becoming a prisoner?
And I couldn't really say whether they've changed since I became a prisoner. Actually, a friend of mine was asking me about this yesterday, and I think it's more like the framework of my understanding has become a bit more coloured in. Like the point that the world is failing people and prisoners are the result of those failures. Like we're symptoms of these wider issues, rather than the cause of them, has been kind of a constant been a constant since I was kind of like doing a sleepover at the occupation of Holloway Women's Prison with Sisters Uncut, or since they don't stop people from doing crime, or since they don't rehabilitate people. You know, there's like 1,000 examples of how prisons don't work. And there's a lot of people that have been doing that work of like defunding the carceral state and the police. So I would really defer to them. I think what I'm trying to do at the moment is be in touch with people, and like make this point that the arms trade and these weapons manufacturers and these massive budgets for defense spending, like this £2 billion contract to Raytheon that the MOD's just given out. It's like 2 point whatever billion pounds on what, you know? Like each one of these armored cars that are being made in Wales and parts of that are being used in Sudan or whatever. You know, wherever this money ends up being used, it's on misery elsewhere, and there's like health and education and housing in the UK that are underfunded deliberately and have been for forever.
What trajectories do you think movements need to take in terms of ending imprisonment?
I'm trying to disband the Met Police in like a short term, and like do some troublemaking in prison while I'm here. But I also just want to talk to these groups that are kind of coming into my awareness that have just been doing this work so well. Like Nejma Collective or Bent Bars and Beyond Bars. Also SDS, and I would love to see whether there are people that are still working on Detained Voices. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's it was a place that people that were in detention centers could record things directly over the phone, and then would be played. I don't know whether it was radio or like a podcast series, but yeah, I think that Detained Voices might have kind of stopped. Yeah, and I think Prisoner Solidarity Network as well. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but yeah, again, just kind of trying to join the dots and learn from other people. Yeah, I've heard that there's a Black Mama bailout in the US. For example, like people. Yeah. Anyway, you probably know much more than I do, so I'm just going to stop talking there. Yeah, I think maybe that's enough for now. Sorry, yeah, I kept thinking that I was going to be more coherent, and I just wasn't. So I thought I would just give you material, and you can decide whether to use it, rather than, rather than try and do it better, because that's been. Anyway, I'm just going to stop talking again. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Frontline Herbalism podcast. You can find the transcript, the links, all the resources from the show at solidarityapothecary.org/podcast.